There are figures that show that we've been at war for 224 of our 246 years as a nation. Enduring war is more like what we have. War not as a necessary defense of our borders, but as an ongoing economic model.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on over 30 cable stations from Maine to New York City. Here's a terrific photo by Eric Blanc of the immense crowds in Algeria protesting their president. President Bouteflika is extremely sick. He hasn't made a speech in 7 years. The generals who actually run Algeria are warning about Syria, meaning they're threatening to use the same murderous force that Assad is using against the people. We record right around the start of the 8th anniversary of the Syrian revolution, amazingly in Daraa, where it all started, and whose city is occupied by Assad forces. There was a protest demonstration when the regime tried to restore a statue in honor of Assad's father. Youths carried one placard that read, "Your statue is from the past, it is not welcome here." Another said, "The country has been destroyed. Instead of reconstruction, we place memorials." In the north, there was widespread bombing in Idlib, even though Russia and Turkey had supposedly negotiated some kind of deal. These are two members of the White Helmets martyred in the bombings. These are firebomb weapons, perhaps internationally banned phosphorus weapons. In Washington, D.C., there was this commemoration. On the 15th, it'll be marked in New York City. On March 16th, 2003, Rachel Corrie was murdered in Gaza by a bulldozer while she stood in plain sight trying to protect the home of a Palestinian family. The Israelis investigated, but their military and their courts found they had done nothing wrong and issued no punishment to the men who had done the killing. Her life has been the subject of plays, songs, and artwork. This March 19th is the 5th anniversary of the murder of Yusuf Shawamra, an act so blatant that the editorial board of the Israeli paper Haaretz called it a war crime. Shawamra was 14 years old. He was picking wild herbs on his family's land in a town in the West Bank. The IDF had run a so-called separation fence through the land, but there had been a hole there in that fence for 2 years. Yusuf and a couple friends went through the fence and were ambushed by an IDF patrol. He didn't die right away, but it took an army ambulance half an hour to travel a mile while he lay bleeding. In the glare of publicity, the IDF mounted an investigation. 8 months later, military advocate Hirsch announced that the army was closing the case. But we remember. More about this outrage at thestruggle.org. Look for the collection, Arrest Killers of Shawamra. On March 30th in New Haven at Yale University, the author and fiery speaker Cornel West will headline a night of solidarity with Yemen at Patel Chapel starting at 7 p.m. Yemeni-American professor Shireen Al-Adaimi will also speak. Cornel West spoke last year in the same hall at Yale for Black History Month, where he mentioned Yemen.
Drone strikes when Bush had 45. And you're killing innocent folk. Those are war crimes. Those babies in Yemen. Oh, they're so precious. We act like somehow we can turn our backs when Malcolm is right. Chickens come home to roost, you know. Sooner or later, you're going to have to pay for what you're doing. The bombs that you drop there are going to land in America in terms of not having enough money for education, for
I urge you to come to that event. We know Congress is voting to end U.S. support for the Yemen war, but we do not think that will stop President Trump. Amnesty International informs us that the human rights lawyer Nasrin Sotoudeh has been given a grotesque 33-year sentence along with 148 lashes in Iran for inciting corruption and prostitution and openly committing a sinful act by appearing in public without a hijab and disrupting public order and other such imaginary offenses. There is a campaign among some women in Iran to oppose the law forcing them to wear the hijab, and Nasrin Sotoudeh has been a supporter. In D.C., these are photos from a protest on Women's Day of the opening of the Saudi trials against women activists in that country. U.S. feminist groups have yet to embrace this cause. Chelsey Manning has been jailed indefinitely for refusing to speak to a grand jury about what she gave to WikiLeaks and for which she was imprisoned and later pardoned by Obama. Daniel Ellsberg was interviewed on Democracy Now!
Right now, she's refusing to take part in basically a conspiracy against press freedom in this country, led by the President of the United States and the Secretary of State. Both of them have said that they thought President Obama was wrong to commute her sentence after 7.5 years. That's enough for Trump, actually, the fact that Obama did it to make him want to reverse that. But in this case, his war with the press gives him a very urgent reason to want to compel her to do what she alone perhaps could do, and that is provide false testimony. And I say false because she's sworn to the opposite, and I'm certain she was telling the truth. That's what she does. And what they want then is false testimony that will say that WikiLeaks in some way encouraged her in ways that went beyond what ordinary journalism would do, or helped her break codes or do this or that, which she needed no help in doing. She's a computer genius by all accounts. And so she said she did this all on her own. I think it's very important that journalists realize and publishers realize that their own ability to operate under the First Amendment and to do their function in a free society is being challenged, attacked here, specifically through Chelsey Manning, as it has been for many years. It's still going on. And she's never done anything more admirable than her current refusal to take part in that assault on the free press. I saw her last fall for the first time, just before her operation for her transition as a trans person. She's now in a post-operative state. And though I haven't talked to her personally, I'm told by people close to her, they're really worried about her being in jail at this point. She should be in a sterile environment with procedures, special procedures every day, actually. Her lawyers believe that the Justice Department sincerely wishes to take care of her needs in the jail, and they are virtually certain from a lot of experience with other people that cannot happen in a jail environment, either the medical aspects of it or the emotional aspects in her state. So refusing her really passionate plea of her lawyers to put her under house arrest under these conditions, with an ankle bracelet, with everything else, but to enable her to get the medical attention she needs. The refusal of that, I would say, amounts to an almost sadistic indifference to her concerns by the judge, from all that I've heard, and by the Justice Department. I'm sure, actually, that there's a great many people, starting with Donald J. Trump and Mike Pompeo, and a lot of Trump's base, who are very happy to see her back in jail where they think she belongs, and happy to see her tortured, in effect. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the nation I live in right now, and she lives in. It really does deserve a great deal of both funding for her defense, which I understand is not a major problem at this point, but will need it because I do expect them to appeal this wrongful incarceration on a number of grounds. So that will be a long battle. But getting her out of that jail is a human need that needs a lot of support. I understand, by the way, that over 5,000 people in one day this morning have petitioned to get her freed immediately or under house arrest, if necessary, but out of that jail. And I certainly strongly join that chorus.
And as a direct and bloody U.S. war against Venezuela appears a bit more possible, we again show the photo from last month's protest. For more, see rpm.world. And now from last fall, part of the acceptance speech by Jackson Browne of the Gandhi Peace Award. We've held back because our video was a little bit far away and we were hoping for something better, but that did not happen. Browne was recognized for taking part in hundreds of benefit concerts for a wide range of causes, and in particular for his opposition to nuclear power and the ever-growing mounds of plastic pollution.
Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for everybody who's spoken, and especially Bobby, thank you for winning that lawsuit against Monsanto. That is really good news. And that is it's a great shot in the arm for everybody who's working to listen. I'm one of the most inarticulate people you'll ever meet. I would rather be singing, I really would. Because of that, I've written something, and it's not clear to me how I got, again, to get in this position. I've been having to write things recently. I wrote the foreword to a book about SEVA, the great organization that has restored eyesight to 5 million people over a period of 20 years by doing benefits and concerts. But it's hard to put things. It's I write in little bits of things that I put in my phone, or I put on little pieces of paper, and when I see them all strung together, it looks that way to me. It's just like little thoughts that are sort of strung together. So I'll read this to you, and you can see what happens when you get a songwriter to make a speech. Good evening. I'm happy to be here to accept this tremendous honor. I can think of some music artists who are at least as deserving of this award as I am, if not more so. But because so many of the people who have received this award are my heroes and teachers, I couldn't have pictured myself declining out of deep admiration for what they have given to me in the world and the sincerity of promoting enduring peace in illuminating the work I accept, even though in comparison, whatever I have contributed seems to me somewhat minor. The measure of a good song is that it doesn't need explaining. Songs speak for themselves. I'm not going to quote any of my own lyrics here, and I'm really happy that someone did earlier. I liked the choice. I did. I'm glad he recited the whole thing, because when I got to the end, I went, you know, like, I like to think that when I write them, they stay written. But there are a lot of other people's songs I could sing to illustrate the power of music and our longing for a more just and peaceful world. It was said by a music critic once a long time ago about one of my songs that it was more of a speech than a song, and that may have been true. But in trying to frame my thoughts in accepting this award, I have had to come face to face with my woefully inadequate skills as a speechwriter. When I was about 8 years old, I met a man who became a mentor to me. His name was John Menzies. He had a baseball team and an Indian tribe, and I was in both of them. The baseball team played on Saturdays when he would sweep through Highland Park Playground and round up all the kids who were hanging around doing not much of anything and put together a game. On Sundays, this former Los Angeles Times Boys Club social worker would drive a car full of city boys to the mountains to shoot bows and hike and cook over a campfire, and each of us would get $1 from our parents, and on the ride up to the highway to the Angeles Crest Mountains, we would stop at a market and buy steak and cookies. The team was called the Thunderbirds. The tribe was just called the Tribe. My family lived about a block from the public library, and John took me there and helped me find the books about Indians that were factual and which gave true accounts of Indian life and the impact the United States' Western expansion had on them. I was just a kid, but it was the beginning of my political education. The history of the U.S. wars in service of the acquisition of Indian land is a long succession of broken promises, outright provocation, lies, and open aggression, under which lay a very deep and not at all hidden belief in white supremacy. This belief is what lies beneath the phrase manifest destiny, and it is also there beneath the idea of American exceptionalism. And although the expansion of American territory was conflated with divine providence, God's will, it was bound up with the lofty American ideal of spreading democratic self-rule across North American continent and eventually throughout the world. Of course, American democracy did not include women or blacks. Not everyone shared this particular version of American greatness, though. Not Lincoln, and not Ulysses S. Grant, nor Mark Twain, or the American Whig Party. The concept of manifest destiny was contested and debated at length. There were those who feared it would give way to impulses of conquest and self-interest. Some believed that the true mission of America was one of democratic example. It seems to me that one fundamental flaw in our democratic system is that each time the government changes hands, the new administration may decide not to honor the policies of the preceding administration. They can choose not to enforce certain laws or strike them down altogether. Thus, all the broken treaties then and now. There is the belief now among our allies that the United States government is an unreliable partner. Or is it we, the people, who are unreliable? Have we become morally incapacitated by our advantage, our privilege, and our comfort? Are we dazed by our entertainments? Are we distracted by our social media and our smartphones? Are we isolated from the rest of humanity by technological advances? The preference for bombing a country from 30,000 feet rather than committing ground troops and risking American lives has now given way to the use of drones, operated by a safe remove and directed by people no one ever sees. The accidental bombing of a wedding party of 50 unarmed people who are celebrating life and love is described as a mistake. A mistake made within an acceptable margin of error. To me, American greatness is something like what Ta-Nehisi Coates has written about as white goodness, as something that must not be debated or even thought twice about, something that rules out self-criticism and precludes any discussion of the consequences of our actions. The challenges we're facing today have their beginning in this flawed view of ourselves as exceptional and therefore entitled to pursue our American interests regardless of the impact on the rest of the world. But what are true American interests? With all in the world that needs fixing, I've always been drawn to those who are willing to try, those who see what must be done and search for the solutions to the problems we face. Activists who take on a particular issue and work on it tirelessly, subordinating much of their lives to organizing and reaching others with the information and the passion and the hope that is required to create change. My part in this work has been to help bring people together. Music is good for that. It can be good for raising spirits, also for raising money. I've appeared and sung my songs to save old-growth redwoods, to promote solar energy, to oppose nuclear energy, to promote human rights, to support civility in our public discourse, to save rivers, to save bridges, to save our oceans, to oppose the use of single-use plastic, to help fund community health centers, to support the arts in our public schools, to defend biodiversity, to abolish the death penalty, to support common sense gun legislation, to support women's rights, to march for peace, and to demonstrate against war. Yeah. And my education has been advanced by the contact I've had with all those committed activists, all those passionate people working on those many fronts. For a long time, I only very rarely sang to help elect a politician. I preferred working for people's initiatives, believing that if politicians want our votes, they can embrace the issues that matter to us and distinguish themselves by taking a principled stand and help in the work of illuminating those issues for us. My view has been that they are more in need of awoke constituencies than they are in need of money. Money to buy TV ads, to try to win over the apathetic and the indifferent. I can't even watch TV. The role money plays in our political process has grown and grown and grown over the years. I find it dispiriting to receive the emails that tell you how the Koch brothers are dumping $20 million into a particular race. And can you please send us $3? I have the sinking feeling that engaging in fundraising for politicians is to participate in the further demise of our electoral integrity. It's to accept the basic premise that whoever raises the most money will win the election. Well, I guess I'm going to have to get over that. Inevitably, you work with what you have to work with. Electoral politics is one of the arenas in which we can work for social justice. And along the way, I've supported the candidacy of a number of fine, courageous, and hardworking politicians. And now there are so many more women and more people of color entering the political arena and speaking to and for an ever more politically engaged and racially diverse populace. As dispiriting as the election of the present administration is, in so many ways, 'twas ever thus. You have a government that is largely unresponsive to the needs of the people, but you do what you have to do as a community to respond to the needs of your community. But it can't be just your community. We need to find common cause and make alliances with those who can aid our individual struggles, and we need to show up for each other. Climate change activists need to show up for Black Lives Matter. Ocean health advocates need to be involved in the struggle to end the school-to-prison pipeline. Environmentalists need to be in the fight for human rights. We need to look beyond our individual battlegrounds and see the bigger picture. The United States must rejoin the world and put the planet first. Now, enduring peace. The United States hasn't been at peace for something like, well, I don't know how many years, since well before the Second World War. There are figures that show that we've been at war for 224 of our 246 years as a nation. Enduring war is more like what we have. War not as a necessary defense of our borders, but as an ongoing economic model. The U.S. war in Afghanistan has been going on almost as long as the Vietnam War did, and is poised to surpass it in length in about 5 months, to become the longest-running war in U.S. history, 17 years in October. Of course, Afghanistan has been defending against foreign invaders for 2,000 years. The Greeks under Alexander the Great, the Arabs, Genghis Khan, Persia, India, Great Britain, the Soviet Union, the US, and NATO. Afghanistan has been called the graveyard of empires. And the United States may become known soon as the graveyard of democracy.
For the complete video, go to peace.org. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.